Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Disney that has scheduled these walkouts from their LGBT employees, but at the same time, there's employees within Disney that have written a collective letter and are kind of like, guys, we don't feel like you're trying to make this big inclusive world, but we actually feel like you're making us go in the closet. People who have religious views and people who have conservative views with this company, which I'm not surprised to hear that, especially given some other topics that we've talked about. Has been following not only this story regarding the Don't Say Gay bill, which is actually the Parental Rights and Education bill. There's been a lot of propaganda surrounding that bill. But just things and actions that they've taken in the past, things I've observed, like if you followed the Gina Carano situation when they ousted her, I've just raised some questions. Like, it really seems like they have a lot of people who they're placating towards within the LGBT community. But I'm like, I wonder how far Disney would be willing to go to sort of protect and stand up for employees who have more conservative values. And the answer is, I guess they don't. Or at least that's how the employees feel. And the company has really become a left-wing activist company within their cartoons that they're pushing out, the movies that they're pushing out, including the big blockbusters, like the Marvel films. But the comic books, man, have been so bad as of late, and they're doing so poorly. You see manga, which is like Japanese comic books, they're far outpacing like American comic books because our stuff has just gone so woke. There's probably other reasons too, but I think the wokeness plays a huge part of it as well. On top of that, of course, we do have the SCOTUS hearings, and CNN is it's funny to see the media try to explain, and it's fair to explain Miss Jackson's record, who's Biden's nominee, and they're acting like Republicans talking about it, mentioning it is some kind of smear tactic. And it's like, no, this is her voting record. She should have to explain the lenient sentences on people with pornography for children, and what she's written about our laws being too harsh to sex offenders. So if she has a reasonable explanation for that, why not make room for her to be able to talk about it? And they keep comparing it to Brett Kavanaugh. And they're like, oh, these Republicans are still mad about Brett Kavanaugh. I'm like, well, we should never forget that you guys accused a man of gang rape so you could further your agenda. So no, we shouldn't forget about that. And people compare the two, these blue verified check mark people from Vox and all these kind of places. And it's like, the big difference between Kavanaugh and Jackson appears to be evidence, as in there was no evidence to suggest that Kavanaugh was some kind of gang rapist, and there's evidence to suggest that if he were, maybe Miss Jackson would have gave him a lighter sentence. So these people have made some really crazy arguments, but the CNN is going to bat for this, and they have Tubin talking about this. And if you are not aware what Tubin was suspended for, like pleasuring himself on a Zoom call, I would not have this man touching anything related to this topic, giving any sort of breakdowns, but they're repeating sort of the White House's talking points regarding this. And it's really something, really see something to see the media go to bat for this, and how the media is kind of coalescing. I said yesterday, I don't foresee her stepping down And if I had to guess, I'd probably say she's going to get confirmed. I don't think that's any reason for Republicans not to make a big fuss about this, and not for people, if you live in Mansions, state or Cinema state, to call and let your voices be heard. If you're in Arizona or somewhere like that, people who may be like listening to this sort of stuff. Like if I called Debbie Stabenow's office a million times, I don't think she's going to do anything, or Gary Peters, because they're not up for election and they're not in likelihood going to be losing anytime soon, even if they were. So I think Arizona is still more swing. So maybe you guys want to make some phone calls if you're in that state to push against this. But if I had to guess right now, I would say she's probably going to get confirmed. But it is really fair game to talk about somebody's record. But I do want to play some of CNN's commentary on it. And again, I think it's so weird that Tubin is talking about it. Also, Nikole Hannah Jones, who's part of the 1619 Project, who got a Pulitzer Prize, she said that tipping is rooted in slavery, and she just had some funny tweets, and I was cracking up earlier just reading them, and I want to share my joy with you guys. So that's what we'll be covering today. But before we go into it, I do want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out stuff on my website, check out different merchandise that I have on the site, like these cool "You Are Not That Special" shirts. Also got them in cool mugs. Also have the Constitution is Glorious Liberty document, which you guys can check out and get that, as we're approaching. Make sure you get some cool gear for 4th of July, because it really makes me upset when people are trying to like coalesce, particularly this speech, the "What is 4th of July to a Slave" that he gave on the 5th of July, because he had enough sense not to bash anything on the 4th of July, because he was at least that respectful. And they're trying to frame people to be against the 4th of July, and if you're Black, making Juneteenth be like the new 4th of July. And it's just another way to cause division. So try to help people be more informed about people's actual feelings around that time. So that's one of the reasons why I made this shirt. So it's a cool shirt. And if you look closely, the glasses that he has on, instead of like the digital like square pixels, they're actually stars. I thought that was a nice touch. So anyway, you guys can check stuff out like that. And also, of course, got the GOAT hoodies and the GOAT shirts, and I do have them in different colors if you're interested. So check out different things that I have on the website, articles, etc. Make sure you follow me across all my different social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, Getter. I'm on all those things. The link should be in the description if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. I do want to thank Bride and Mission Pack. I'm here in their studio. As always, if I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. It doesn't work like that. They just like uplifting conservative voices. And I'm glad to be here. I'm really excited. Tonight they have an event with Stephen Moore, economist, and my family is going to be going. And so I was like explaining, I'm like, yeah, Stephen Moore, worked on the tax cuts and stuff. And they're like, tax cuts? I got really excited because they remembered seeing a little bit more money in their pocket. So I'm like, it's very timely that he'll be here, but it should be a good event. It's sold out, so if you didn't get a seat, I'm sorry. But there will be more to come, and I do appreciate the work that the pack does. So let's jump into it. I have this Kamala Harris clip. You guys know I like to show something funny, and here's just a word salad that's going around about the passage of time.
The governor and we were all doing a tour of the library here, and talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time when we think about a day in the life of our children.
Such a significance when you think about the passage of time, guys. That reminds me of is it time today is the time to do what we do every day, or something like that. She has some weird word salads, man. I don't know why anyone thought she'd be talented enough to do this job, but here she is. She you might be asking, how'd she get her start? You can look it up, bruh. She was a side chick. Anyway, uh, I want to talk about this Disney story first. So Disney employees, we've covered this on the show. There's people really upset about the Don't Say Gay bill. And if anyone is saying that with all seriousness, there's like legislators going around with tape on their faces, writing gay on it. I saw a video, there was some politicians, they were in a school and they just had kids chanting gay, 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 gay. There's someone out in California who's buying billboards in Florida that just say gay in big bold letters. And they're like, how many do you want me to buy? And someone retweeted and said, as many times as that word is actually in the bill, which is 0. So if you're under the impression that the bill outlaws you being gay, saying gay, kids discussing their 2 dads or something, that's actually not what the bill's about. And you clearly didn't read it. And a lot of people didn't. Shame on you. It's only 7 pages long. The stuff that's important is about 4. So shame on you. You are not doing your civic duty. Shame to the activists, shame to the Democrats, shame to the media for carrying their water and spreading this propaganda everywhere. So that propaganda, of course, spread to the Disney employees, and we've covered that on the show. Some of them who've given like heartfelt, tearful sort of, and not crying so much, but they were very upset. People saying this has hurt me. And I'm like, you're a grown man. How did it hurt you? Show me on a doll where it touched you. Like, no, the bill didn't hurt you, sir. You should read the bill with your eyes instead of your feelings, but I don't think he did either. So what the bill does, and I've said this many times, is that it stops administrators and teachers and whoever from conspiring against parents for them not to share information about their kids. Okay. And it doesn't specifically say, it doesn't have stuff about outing your kids. It doesn't say stuff even specifically in the mental health portion about someone being transgender or whatever. It says it's information regarding their mental health. So I would think that would expand to things like if your kid was like anorexic or any other things like that. If you think they're going through depression, those are things that you can share with the parents. And why wouldn't you want to share those things with the parents? Because the parents are the ones who have the long-term investment in their kids, obviously. Some people are like, well, kids should be able to share those things with their parents if they want to share those things. My kids don't always make the right decisions, and you know that. So why are you gaslighting everyone? You know, people do not always make the right decisions for themselves, and parents, it is their job to protect their children. So don't play these games. And I've been talking a lot about this online, and I was breaking down someone's belief of like kids will just share that information. And I think I talked about that a little bit yesterday, but someone wrote a comment and said that a friend of theirs got pregnant in school, and the counselors and the teachers or whatever was trying to convince her not to tell her parents because they said that they would disown them or kick them out or whatever. And that didn't end up being the case. As a matter of fact, the mother raised the child for 6 years. And so that one really upset me because I'm like, what was the goal there? What was the goal of the parent, of the teachers hiding this pregnancy from the parent? Because the student had to, I don't know if you guys know how pregnancy works, but it becomes pretty evident eventually. It becomes pretty evident. It's kind of rare that people can't notice that you're pregnant. So what was the goal there? Them get to prom and be like, oh, your dress doesn't fit. I wonder why that is. In this nice big round shape. Why aren't you getting fat in all these places? Like, why what was the goal? Was the goal to eventually be like, hey, you can take care of this in a clinic? I don't understand the goal there. So that one really upset me when they told me that in the comments. But you know what? I had a friend, and I brought her on the show to talk about her abortion before, but it was in sex education class. Everyone's so like, we got to have this, is where the idea was introduced to her that she could possibly have an abortion without her mother's knowledge. So there's great teachers, there's great administrators. I've had some great principals and teachers or whatever in my life that I that thought were great, and you'd be lucky to have them. But there's some freaking weirdos out here. There's some really weird people out here who don't have the best intentions. So I don't understand people who feel like, who encourage this separation between parents and their children, and who will take the sides of the teachers who are openly trying to segregate and cause a rift and division and rebellion between the parent and the adult. I mean, yeah, between the child and the adult, the parent. And I guess if you want to indoctrinate them into a particular worldview, like the Michigan Democrat Party, they tweeted out something like, the parents shouldn't have to look at the curriculum. They're not the client. The society is the client. The society will decide what the child is supposed to know. You don't think the parents who are taxpayers in your stuff for your school where you're working out is being paid out of their property taxes? You don't think that they are the client while you are teaching their children? Who is this? You don't think they're part of this society? So don't think this is like rare as far, maybe it is. I would have hoped before it was kind of a rare sort of mentality, but the more I see people talking about it and retaliating, I'm like, this is a bigger problem than what we think. A much bigger problem than what we think. So anyway, you have these Disney employees are very upset because Bob Chapek, the CEO, at first he put out a memo and was taking a more neutral response, and his response was, we're going to keep making inclusive content. And there were even people who were commenting in like a Twitter stuff like, oh, so they just think they can make change by making media. Yes, Hollywood thinks that they can make change by making media. Why do you think there is a disproportionate amount of LGBT representation in media? Because that's how they hope to move the needle, and they have moved the needle on other issues throughout time through media. So that is a plan. That is something they've actually been quite successful at. So Disney, that's how I kind of took their statement. Like, we're going to keep making that content. For example, the new Buzz Lightyear movie, for example, has a lesbian kiss or a gay kiss in it and stuff. So they believe in moving that needle in that sort of way. But that wasn't good enough. They wanted them to stop giving money to Republicans. And so they just stopped giving money to both, by the way, which Democrats were upset about that because they just want to pick one side and not think about what's good for the company. And they wanted them to come out and totally condemn this bill. One Disney employee said that they wanted them to be able to shut it down like they've shut down bathroom legislation. So that's what they wanted. They wanted Disney to actively kill the bill. So they did eventually say, hey, we are against this sort of legislation. And there were some parents that are like, well, that's not good. And DeSantis called them out. And he said, you've made a lot of money on parents who disagree with your stance on the bill because they support the bill. People who read and actually know what the language of the bill is, they generally are okay with it, including people who are gay. Because they're like, let kids be kids. But there are some people out there who do want your kids, even at the tender age of 5 and 6 and so on, to see this stuff. As a matter of fact, we've talked about this quite a bit. Blue's Clues, if you guys recall, I don't know how long you've been following me. Blue's Clues had a video where they were teaching the alphabet. And when they got to P, it was P for pride. And they had all these different flags, including a pansexual flag. And they had trans flags and stuff as well, but they had a non-binary, but they had pansexual. And so I did a video talking about it because I actually just pointed out the pansexual one because I thought that one was the most sort of controversial one. And I didn't want to argue with everybody about everything. So I picked out the one that was most controversial because if you're pansexual, you have no sexual limitations. And so many people were angry at me and my definition. I'm like, that is literally the definition. And they're like, that just means you just capable of loving anyone. I'm like, You're capable of loving anyone without any sexual orientation, uh, pointing out your orientation at all. Like I can love anyone myself without being pansexual. So if you're talking about your orientation, then yes, you are regarding to it in a sexual nature. Yes, because we're not talking about the magic of friendship. It's not a friendship flag. Okay. And I also pointed out that Disney had a drag. I'm sorry, not Disney. Blue's Clues had a pride parade where a drag queen ran it, and they were showing all these different families, except like a traditional sort of family. And they had two dads, they had two moms, they had people who were non-binary, etc. The only like straight people there were allies. They didn't even like have a mom, a dad, and their like bio kids. So they never even did that. People were even mad that I pointed that out. They're like, well, they've had enough stuff. I'm like, but if you're trying to show that everyone else is normal compared to like the traditional family, then why wouldn't you include that to make it look like it's just like everyone else? It kind of looks like you're just trying to shift things here. So anyway, the demographic for Blue's Clues is 3 to 5. So the Florida bill specifically talks about 5K through 3. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. Blue's Clues made something intentionally for your 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So there are people out there who want to direct this stuff towards your young kids. Just FYI. Just FYI. So maybe there are people within Disney who have not read the bill, and that's why they're upset about it. They've heard what the activists have said, and that's why they're walking out, because they want them to kill that sort of legislation. They didn't do what they wanted to do. It's already signed. They want Disney to kill stuff in Florida and everywhere else. They want to, I don't know. But maybe they haven't read the bill. I think there's a lot of people who just don't understand the bill, haven't read the bill, and are believing the propaganda on CNN and Vox articles, and what the Democrats are telling them. Like, this is a really big propaganda machine as far as this particular bill. This bill that makes all the sense in the world if you actually read it. Daily Wire did a poll, and you can say, oh, Daily Wire. What Daily Wire did is that they actually went to people and they told them what was actually in the bill. And the vast majority of people think the bill is good. But I am telling you, there are people who are upset because they want to instruct this stuff to your kids. Now, maybe that is a small vocal number, but it's out there. It's out there. So anyway, there are conservatives who work at Disney. There are religious people who work at Disney, and according to them, they feel like they are being pushed like in a closet, in a place that they don't feel like their workplace is inclusive. So they actually wrote a letter to Disney, or an open letter. So I'm going to go ahead and read that to you guys. As employees of the Walt Disney Company, we believe in the dignity of all people. This is why we do what we do. We write stories, we make costumes, we act in parades, we run cruises, we stream movies, we make magic. We do this because our work contributes to the foundation of wonder that inspires joy, awe, and delight in guests and audiences of all ages. We are proud employees of the Walt Disney Company. We love our jobs because we get to share the wonder of life, of human experience with millions of people worldwide. However, over the last few years, one group of cast members has become invisible within our company. The Walt Disney Company has come to an increasingly uncomfortable place to work for those of us whose political and religious views are not explicitly progressive. We watch quietly as our beliefs come under attack from our own employer, and we frequently see those who share our opinions condemned as villains by our own leadership. The company's evolving response to the so-called Don't Say Gay legislation in Florida has left many of us wondering what place we have in a company actively promoting a political agenda so far removed from our own. The Walt Disney Company leadership frequently communicates its commitment to creating an inclusive workplace where cast members feel comfortable sharing their perspectives and being their authentic selves at work. This is not our workplace experience. Over the last few weeks, we have watched as our leadership has expressed their condemnation for laws and policies we support. We have watched as our colleagues convinced that no one in this company could possibly disagree with them and grow increasingly aggressive in their demands. They insist that the Walt Disney Company take a strong stance on not only this issue but other legislation and openly advocate for the punishment of employees who disagree with them. An internal poll within the company went out a few months ago asking us if we felt accepted in the company. Many of us didn't complete it because the nature of the questions made us worry that the results of the poll could be used to target us for quietly holding a position that runs against the progressive orthodoxy that Disney seems to promote. The Walt Disney Company has fostered an environment of fear that any employee who decides not to toe the line will be exposed and dismissed. Much has made our internal efforts to reimagine tomorrow, but as much as diversity and inclusion are promoted, the tomorrow being reimagined doesn't seem to have much room for religious or political conservatives within the company. Left-leaning cast members are free to promote their agenda and organize on company time using company resources. They call their fellow employees bigots and pressure the Walt Disney Company to use corporate influence to further the left wing leadership goals. Meanwhile, those of us who don't align with the vision to keep our heads down and do our work without bringing our personal beliefs into the workplace. We've done this without complaint because we don't want to rock the boat, but the boat is being rocked and our leadership seems compelled to reward those who are rocking it. Employees who want the Walt Disney Company to make left wing political statements are encouraged, while those of us who want the company to remain neutral can say only in a whisper out of fear of professional retaliation. The company we love seems to think we don't exist or don't belong here. The politicalization of our corporate culture is damaging morale and causing many of us to feel our days with the Walt Disney Company might be numbered. Furthermore, as the politicalization makes its way into our content and public messaging, our more conservative customers will feel similarly unwanted. You can only preach at or vilify your audience for so long before they decide to spend their money elsewhere. Working for the Walt Disney Company is a dream come true. We love being part of the creating magic that so many people around the world enjoy. Our storytelling is second to none and resonates with people from all walks across the political spectrum. Our parks are the source of joy and inspiration that Walt hoped they would become. Every year, millions of guests escape an increasingly divided world to a place where they can relive fond memories of the past and savor the challenge and promise the future. They do this alongside thousands of other guests that might not have anything in common with them other than a shared love for Disney. The unique brand of family entertainment that Disney is known for is an objective good in the dark world. It brings people together and provides cultural touchpoints that even the worst enemies can unite over. At the height of COVID lockdowns, the summer of 2020, when the country was fiercely divided over a range of issues, Hamilton provided us something to collectively celebrate. At the end of an increasingly contentious election year, the Mandalorian was there to soothe a weary nation with non political entertainment we could all enjoy no matter who you voted for. When Disney takes sides in political debates, they deprive the world of a shared love we all have in common. The Walt Disney Company is uniquely situated to provide experiences and entertainment that can bridge our national divide and bring us all together. I'm going to stop right there. There's like two paragraphs left, but I just wanted to point out it's funny they mentioned the Mandalorian. And there were a ton of people who watched it. I didn't watch the Mandalorian, but that was where the huge issue with Gina Carano popped out of. And she ended up getting fired. For those of you who don't know, she worked on The Mandalorian. She's a former MMA fighter, and she went to acting, and she was one of the stars in Mandalorian. And basically, she got fired because she's a conservative, and the Disney made up a reason and smeared her as if she was disrespecting the Jewish community because she tweeted out something with COVID and how people are snitching on their neighbors and did related to like the time leading up to the Holocaust, and they're like, oh, she's disrespecting the Jewish community and said a bunch of different stuff that just was not true, and it wasn't a true representation of her tweet. But that was like the reason that they gave to why they let her go. But they hadn't had any contact with Gina from the time that she tweeted out beep bop boop, because people were pressuring her, trying to put her pronouns in her profile on Twitter. And so she wrote beep bop boop, and people were upset, and Disney had their LGBT reps try to talk to her, and how they wanted her to apologize. And she's like, I will give an apology or an explanation of where I'm coming from, but I'm not going to give you some kind of fake and sincere thing. And so they're like, well, your problem is trying to solve this logically, and this people are having an emotional response. And she's like, well, why? It's not fair. How come I can't respond logically? So they wanted her to get on a Zoom call with like 40 LGBT different people, and she's like, how about I take like 4 or 5 of them out to dinner and we can have a talk, so they can look into my eyes, I can look into their eyes, we can see that we're all human, and bridge some kind of divide. And Disney didn't want to do that. They didn't like how she was responding, and so basically they cut off communication. She didn't do any more like advertisement for the show, whatnot. And she said the next time she heard from them, she didn't hear from them. They just announced, like, Lucasfilm was like, oh, we no longer plan to work with Gina Carano because she disrespected the Jews. So that was the reason that was the excuse why they let her go. But they were upset about this particular thing. And so when I heard that they had like this big like representation of how like LGBT people like locked and loaded and ready to go to have a Zoom call with, I'm like, I wonder how many employees they have grouped together like that for religious groups or to withhold kind of conservative sort of values and bents. So now you see like these employees were saying they do not feel included, they do not feel respected, they feel that they are within a hostile work environment. They wouldn't even fill out a darn survey. And I have a friend who worked for Disney doing writing. I'll just say writing for them. On particular books, and they got a letter, and it was with a third party company, and that was a survey like, what's your background? Like, what is your race, what is your gender, what is your and like different sort of some ideology sort of bent questions too and stuff. And he's pretty sure that he's not getting jobs now because, and he's very, very experienced and has sold really well with some of the stuff that he's put together. But he thinks the reason why he's not really working with them right now is because he's a conservative white male. So I'm like, man, you probably should have never filled that out. But so there's people out there who recognize that Disney's had some bigotry internally. And we've talked about that too on the show, like their Reimagine Tomorrow project that they've talked about and boast about, like in their memo, and that was mentioned in this thing. It's like their inclusion project, but really it's just like CRT type of stuff, like segregating the white people, Hispanic people, and black people. The black people were in the Wakanda group, just so you know. I told my dad that, and man, he just laughed. So this is a problem within Disney, and I got to tell you, they have customers who really feel like, hey, you resent me. And I'm glad they're addressing it. And I think Disney's going to have some kind of soul searching moment, and they're going to have to tell their activists within their company no from time to time. But they are approaching, I think, the point of no return for a lot of people. Maybe not enough people yet, but they'll get there. They've gotten to a really bad point with me. I haven't seen a couple last things from Disney because I'm like, I don't want to support you guys. So, but I do agree that we should have things that we can look at that aren't political, that can unite us. But everyone doesn't want there to be something that can unite us. Even sports are so divisive. like the kneeling for the national anthem. People stopped playing that, or even how they used the Black national anthem, which is called Lift Every Voice. And yes, people do call it the Black national anthem. It's just a nickname, let it go. But they were like, well, we're going to play this before the national anthem, or we're going to play it afterwards or whatever. So we're going to respect both. But I'm like, you're taking this beautiful hymn, and it is a wonderful song. If you've never heard it, if you're not aware of it, go look it up. It's a beautiful song that's really about looking at the world and how far we come and not being bitter about the past. So it really has no business being sung out of the mouths of some of these activists today, just to be frank. But it is disgusting that they would use that in such a political ploy and keep trying to divide our world. We do need things outside of politics where we can come together and just unite. And everyone is devoted to being so absolutely woke. Did you guys know that the Punisher changed their logo? You know the character Frank Castle, who is like the skull on his shirt? Disney/Marvel changed his logo. It's like some kind of pirate looking thing. Let me see if I can find a picture for you guys really quick. It's really weird. So bear with me one moment. It's really weird and stupid. I mean, and it's such an iconic logo. It's such an iconic logo, and you're gonna be like, why would they do this? And I will tell you why they're doing it after I show you what it is. Gosh, it's not letting me save it. But the reason why they decided to change their logo is because there was too many people using the original logo with like Blue Lives Matter. They would put it on like flags or whatever with the thin blue line and mix it up. And they didn't want that sort of association with that anymore. So they changed the Punisher's logo. Not because there was some kind of official use with the logo in association. I mean, it's just like people, fans or whatever, mixing it up. Even though Frank has a background in law enforcement. So I'm like, okay, that's weird. But they changed the Punisher's logo because people on the right, or I'm assuming mostly the right, were using it in association with the movement of being pro-police. So Disney/Marvel was like, we're going to change his whole entire logo. Something as iconic as the Punisher's logo. And they made it some kind of weird pirate looking dumb thing. It's just really, really ridiculous. So that's something that they pretty much did out of spite. Pretty much done out of pure spite for the viewers, for the readers. There it is. That's a new logo for the Punisher. He's also like in charge of the hand, like a ninja assassination group thing. That's beside the point. That's like a new dumb story they got going on. But yeah, they changed his logo. The iconic Punisher logo. Gone. Because people, fans of the Punisher, also happen to like cops and paired stuff together. So they changed the logo. How does that make sense as a company to do that? It's your property. It's your intellectual property, but you hate people so bad that you know what? We're willing to give this up just to spite you. It's bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. That is where we are right now in the world. I'm going to read these last two paragraphs. CEO Bob Chapek had the right idea in his original statement that he has since walked back. In Chapek's own words, as we have seen time and time again, corporate statements do very little to change outcomes or minds. Instead, they are often weaponized by one side or the other to further divide and inflame. Disney is far more important and impactful to the world by avoiding politics than it will ever be by embracing a political agenda, by focusing on entertainment that inspires us with stories of universal appeal. We are doing the good in the world. Disney shouldn't be a vehicle for one demographic political activism. It's so much bigger and important than that. More than ever, the world needs things that we can unite around. That's the most valuable role the Walt Disney Company could play in a world at this time. It's a role we've played for nearly a century, and it would be a shame to throw all of that away in the face of left wing political pressure. Please don't let Disney become just another thing we divide over. And I'm sorry it's there. I'm sorry Disney's already a thing that is divisive. Even like the commentary, man, like there's so many dumb takes with their characters. Like, if you don't like Rey, then you're sexist for Star Wars. There's a line in the Doctor Strange movie with Wanda, and she's like, "You do something, you break the rules, you're a hero. I break the rules, I'm a villain. It doesn't seem fair." And there are people who are pointing out, "Yeah, it seems like it's sexism." I'm like, no, Wanda looks freaking crazy in that trailer, and she is. She literally is, guys. She is, and I did watch WandaVision, and if you didn't watch it, I'm just spoiler alert, she tortured an entire town while she was like warping reality for her grief fantasy. So I think that's pretty bad. I think it's pretty bad. And by the way, she and her brother were working for like Hydra, right? They did sign up to be like experimented on, and then they teamed up with a murder bot, like, so they were the bad guys. So and granted, they did join the Avengers, and that's great and all. But it's just not the same as Doctor Strange. He was an arrogant doctor. That's bad that he was arrogant, but he did save lives. So they're like, sexism. You don't like Miss Marvel? That's sexism. I've never liked Miss Marvel, not even the comic books. Never liked her. And I don't like Brie's performance, even though I don't like this character. I don't think she was rightly casted for it. But if you got complaints, sexist. So I hate that this stuff is so politically divisive, and I share the sentiment that you can make content and it just be something that we can unite over, and that things that aren't political have very, very, very important value within our country, within our world. But everyone is really devoted into politics, and it's exhausting. It's really exhausting. But to the people who feel like, why are we talking about all this culture war stuff? Man, this stuff is so extraordinarily important. That's how people try to weasel their way in to change entire nations, I promise you. And this is bigger than just petty little culture war stuff. I mean, people are at war for your kids. That's because the people behind pushing the hysteria and the propaganda with this bill are aware what it actually is. I'm sure they actually read it. But they decided to go a particular route because they know it's a good bill, and they want access to your children to be able to instill whatever within their minds, and they want to continuously cause this line of division between the parents and the child. And I said this yesterday, if you're a good teacher who thinks the stuff is garbage, you need to speak up about your profession and the people who are making a mockery of it. People cannot be afraid. And I commend these employees for writing this letter, but they need to speak up more, like, and get some kahunas and actually put some stuff on the line. Like, I don't know how many people of these might have been animators or writers or people who wear costumes in theme parks. I don't know what the makeup of that is, but people need to be brave enough to actually speak up about it. Those people were brave enough to walk out of Disney so they can, over a bill that just says, hey, we don't we don't think you should hide things from parents about their kids, and we don't think you should be teaching them stuff about sexual orientation at like 5 years old. Like, that's what they're walking out over. And I'm sure many of them don't even realize that. So I'm not going to call them all pedos or anything like that. I think most of them are uninformed children, like grown hysterical children throwing a tantrum and too irresponsible to read 7 pages, but they still can vote. But they can still vote. So there's those people walking. They're brave enough to do that. So people got to be brave enough to speak up against the system, or else, there was one person who was brave enough to write a letter, who got beat by, she was like placed like 17th or something in the finals at the female like swimming championship or whatever. So she was like an alternative or something instead of actually competing. And it's her senior year, so now she's like done, and but she gave still all this concessions to Leah, and it still called Leah she and all this other kind of stuff, and was just like, this is unfair. And people should have been speaking out before, not when it's kind of like too late. Kudos to speaking out at all, but people need to stand up more before everything is gone. I mean, they took away the darn Punisher logo. What's next? So let's briefly talk about SCOTUS and the CNN. So Senator Hawley pointed out in a Twitter thread, and we talked about it at length and mentioned it again yesterday, so I won't go deeply into it. Has a Ketanji Brown Jackson has a history of giving lighter sentences to people who peddle in child pornography, and that has raised some questions. And not only that, when she was in college, she did write that there was unfair treatment for sex offenders and didn't think that they should be labeled as such afterwards. So it is totally legitimate to actually go through the record of someone who's going to be on the court for a very long time. And there can be people who are like, well, she's just saying, wants to argue about the constitutionality of it. She is not that deep in the constitutionality of stuff, I think, because, I mean, she is a left-wing activist, and there have been situations where she's ruled on something and it's had to be overturned in other courts, and there's a pretty high rate of that for her, because she expels her overreach authority. And she's going to vote like pretty like lockstep with the liberal opinions or whatever. And they're trading her seat for Breyer's. So at first we're like, we don't expect any like sort of pushback because it's trading one bad person for another. But I think that they should really make a fuss, because the sexual predators, offenders, and stuff, that's weird and gross to me. But I want to play you guys reactions from CNN, because I think it's funny.
Can I just add one point about these kiddie porn cases? And this came up, I remember, when I was an assistant U.S. attorney back in the 90s.
I gotta play. It's gonna play all over again when I press it. But I just wanted to, just like these kiddie porn cases, as if that's a small thing. I'm gonna play it.
Can I just add one point about these kiddie porn cases? And this came up, I remember, when I was an assistant U.S. attorney back in the 90s, is that when those sentencing guidelines were written for those cases, this was a time when the people who committed these crimes would order individual photos and then get them usually through email. And then they would be sentenced based on the number of photos they possessed. This was all pre-internet. So once the internet came in and people got access to hundreds and then thousands of photos, the sentencing guidelines would reflect hundreds and then thousands of photos. Federal judges have been struggling with the issue of how do you create a fair system that was designed pre-internet that was, yet you have to sentence people post-internet. And what I thought Chairman Durbin pointed out is that judges across the country, including Republican-appointed judges, have been saying, look, we can't apply the rules that were designed pre-internet for an internet society, and many judges have been giving somewhat less sentences as a result.
So one, they still have more photos, and one of the people who she gave a lower sentence to was someone who was like trafficking with photos of his own daughter. So I'm still disturbed, but that's sort of their talking point, the White House talking point, as they try to make her look better about this. And this is like a long sort of history with her, and I think it's weird, and it's something that if you've mentioned it, they're like, oh, these Republicans are slandering her, this is their hit job, and it's like, this is her record. This is her record. It's a lifetime appointment. She needs to talk about this, and people need to talk about it thoroughly. And it's creepy. It's weird. And you know what's creepy and weird about CNN? First of all, they had their issues with Cuomo, the Cuomo brothers, recently, and they also had other producers who got into some legal trouble for like sex trafficking and sexual assault and other kind of stuff. So CNN has had did like a whole show about it maybe like a month or two ago. They've had some troubles with this issue as of late, but Tubin was suspended. He should be fired. He should not be on the air, in my opinion. He was suspended for diddling himself on a Zoom call. So that's gross. So to have Tubin get on here, who got suspended for diddling himself while like talking to people on a Zoom call, like, that's really bizarre. It's kind of, I don't know, like you'd write that in a skit. Like, does CNN have no self-awareness? Are they winking and nodding at us? Like, he is their legal analyst. But I'd be like, bruh, I can't do this segment. Get someone else. There's people making all these jokes like, hey, we need to see his hands because we don't know what he's doing. Because he's a gross weirdo. And that's not the only like obscenely gross thing that he did. I mean, he like, I believe he slept with a co-worker's daughter and impregnated her, and he wanted to force him to have an abortion, but they wouldn't or whatever. I think that is the story that I'm describing accurately. But yeah, that's the kind of dude he is. That's the kind of dude he is. So I just, if I was seeing it, I would not have him talking about this stuff. I would not have him talking about this stuff in the least bit. Not at all. Not at all. Gosh, but they're really going to bat for her. So as I said, I don't think she's gonna step down. And if you want her to not get confirmed, if you live in Arizona, if you live in West Virginia, you guys better make some phone calls and really, really make it known. They better be running some ads. I don't know if they are running ads and stuff, but because otherwise I think she's still probably going to get confirmed. But I think this is creepy. I think this is weird, especially at a time where, you know, there's all this, I know, people coming out like, yeah, we want to expose your kids. So this world is really weird and gross to me right now. I'm not going to lie to you. Last thing I want to cover today is Nikole Hannah Jones. So she's the writer of one of the writers for the 1619 Project. She won a Pulitzer Prize. She's really big on this everything as racist kick. So she actually had a hot take on tipping. So she said tipping is a legacy of slavery, and if it's not optional, then it shouldn't be a tip, but simply included in the bill. Have you ever stopped to think why we tip? Like, why tipping is a practice in the US and almost nowhere else? So first of all, this isn't true in a lot of different ways, but people do tip around the world. Now there's countries where it's like, no, you just do your service and they expect you to do whatever, but small tips can still be polite. But there are other countries that do tip. As a matter of fact, like, U.S. tipping probably is a practice that we got from the Europeans, because Europeans did, excuse me, they tipped, and some people were like, the person who I originally saw them share this tweet from Nikole Hannah Jones. I guess people were sending him this fact check or whatever, saying yes, tipping's from slavery. And he's like, no, and he had sources of them doing it in France, and even it was in like a Shakespeare play where they reference gratuity and stuff. So it's not something that just popped up, because of slavery, and it's something that's done around the world. Now, like, when we went to the Philippines, I was in the 10th grade, and we tipped someone who's with us at the airport. Now, he was with us for a while with our bags because we had complications, and so we were like, okay, let's give him a 20. And so people were like, what? And they were really flipping out about it. They're just like, I'm like, yeah, take the money. But I mean, that I guess you can do a lot with a $20 bill in the Philippines. And when we told the people we were with who invited us to come and minister and stuff, they're like, no, that's just a job. Like, what are you doing? It's funny though that they felt like that, because you have to bribe everyone there. Though it's weird that they were like bad with the tip, but like we got invited to sing on TV. We got invited to sing, and they're like, you gotta pay him. We're like, what? Like, you gotta give him some money. That's how we do things here. And we're like, we were invited to sing, and they're like, no, but you gotta pay him. And so it's just like, that's how it is. You gotta pay. And we're like, this is a bribe. This is what we call this, a bribe. And it's like, no, like, nothing's wrong with this. I'm just like, okay. So just FYI, things are different in different countries. But definitely different countries do tip. So it is not a uniquely U.S. slavery sort of thing. But someone, this is a thread. What do you think is the purpose of tipping, Teray? Why does it exist? And they said, to transfer the labor costs from the businesses to the consumer. Bingo. If there was no tipping and it was just included in the bill, that would like radically and dramatically just increase the food costs, right? And then there's bartenders and other people who prefer the tipping system. Like, I saw people commenting like, I work at a bar and my tips make me way more money than I have at any other job that I've worked at. I can really imagine that for people who are like working at a bar, because people can make some dumb decisions about how much they'll give away when they're wasted. So yeah, I bet that can lead to some really good tips. But what's maybe the motivation behind this, you may ask? Well, let's get a little deeper in this. I tip, and if I don't, I leave a note as to why. But telling Black people that we should tip regardless of quality of service, when we know we too often do not get high quality service, is asinine to me. So someone retweeted that particular tweet and said, I'm going to, next time I have a Black waitress, I'm going to leave this down and say, I can't tip you because I'm fighting slavery. So people point out like, oh, maybe she has this attitude because she herself doesn't want to tip. And she did tweet this to try to debunk that, saying, well, not to debunk that. People were accusing her of not tipping, but someone else was like, I tip well or whatever. And she claimed that she does too, even though she also said that another tweet that she may not tip. So she says, my sister was a server for many years, as was my niece. I tip because I know how much they needed them. But you can't tell me I have to tip regardless of service, because if restaurants are adding a service charge, they can just put the waiters on a regular wage. So she knows how the system is set up in the US. She knows how it is. So if it's bad service, she just thinks that what they should basically work for slave wages. if they weren't up to snuff and par with Miss Give Me Tenure or Else. Come on. Most people do tip like 15 starting off, or even 20% if someone's not doing a good job, and then they'll tip more if they go above and beyond. So it just really does sound like she doesn't want to tip. Like, how the service is, the way it's set up in the US. That it's set up that way. Now, if you want all the food costs to just go up dramatically, and then being, hey, if you want to tip extra, it's on top of your burger that's now I don't know, $40 or whatever. I don't know how dramatically it would raise, but it would be a lot. People don't understand how much labor is. But I just thought this was really funny. From Nikole Hannah Jones. Everything is slavery, everything is bad. And it really speaks to, like, they have this attitude of, oh, it's the businesses that are trying to push off the costs and they should pay the people more. You could feel that way, and it would restructure their costs, and it would also restructure the actual pay for what we pay for the food. But if you feel that these workers are entitled to those wages or that pay, so why won't you don't want to tip them? You don't want to tip them? And this idea that, like, you don't want to tip anyone, even if the service is bad, you want to leave them a note instead, like, hey, you were trash, so that's why I didn't tip you. Is that really like the communist socialist sort of feeling that people have? Because people talk about merit all the time. People should get paid based off of merit. And I know these aren't that type of people. But when it comes out of your pocket, you are. When it's out of your pocket, you want the excellence if you want cash. So, and we're not talking about someone who is poor. We're talking about someone who is, I don't know how much her value is and how much money she's making. But we are talking about an award-winning journalist who basically is the Ben Shapiro calls her de facto leader of the New York Times. So it's one thing when you got, like, people who have nothing pretty much arguing about tipping on the internet, but you're talking about someone who has money and just doesn't want to tip. It doesn't sound like the utopias that they pretty much preach about is something that they actually want to hold themselves to, in my opinion, from that observation. But I do think this is funny. And another long look at the real world, an explanation of why these people should not be in charge. But FYI, back to, like, what your kids are learning in school, the reason why this woman got a Pulitzer Prize for the 1619 Project, which was littered with errors, is because they wanted to legitimize that sort of point of view so they can indoctrinate your kids. So just watch what your kids are doing. Try to look at those curriculum bills that are moving through the Senate and houses and stuff at your local legislative branches and states and stuff, and try to make sure that you can see what your kids are learning, because I promise you they're being fed crap like hers. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website, different articles that I have. Make sure that you guys are following me across all my different social media platforms, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, which I have like 3 accounts now. There's the main one, Black Tea News, there's True Black Tea, and there's also a Cup of Black Tea News. So make sure you're following all 3. Make sure you're following me on YouTube, and I do have 2 YouTube channels. One is, of course, the main one, and the other one is also a Cup of Black Tea. I do not, if you like, go to youtube.com/Cup of Black Tea. That's not how you're gonna be able to find it right now, because it's pretty new, so it doesn't have enough subscribers, but the links are in the description of the video if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook. So make sure that you follow me across all the different platforms. Make sure you guys check out different merchandise that I got on the website, like this I voted for President Trump, and all I got was historic peace stills, border security, ISIS destroyed. You got no new wars, a tax cut, gas under $2, and this lousy T-shirt. So make sure you get stuff like this to trigger leftists in your life. I still got the "I am not the victim you're looking for." I mentioned the Gina Carano situation. I made this after that because she doesn't fit the bill for what they are trying to do. And you know what? I really do appreciate her standing up for herself, and I do appreciate Daily Wire for sticking up for her as well. And she is coming out with a film for them that should be out in the summer. I can say the quality of it looks really good. We'll see how it is. We'll see how it is, and I will. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. I did want to mention something else about the Daily Wire, but I will leave that for tomorrow. They came out with something that was pretty funny. But I'll talk about it at the top of the hour tomorrow. The top of the hour tomorrow. So God bless you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.